Hello, everybody. I've got 7 o'clock. Is that what time you have?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay.
Then let's call the Columbia Township Planning Commission meeting on April 14th, 2021 to order at 7 o'clock. And we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, for liberty and justice for all. Okay, roll call. Dave?
Hi, this is Dave Marcelletti, attending remotely from Columbia Township, Van Buren County, Michigan. Did you hear me okay?
I heard you.
Yes, I did. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Chris? I don't see Chris on unless he's the iPhone. Beverly?
Present, attending remotely. I'm located in Columbia Township in Van Buren County, Michigan right now.
Thank you. Anita?
Anita Manley, attending remotely from Columbia Township, Van Buren County, Michigan.
Thank you. Leslie Elrod, attending remotely from Van Buren County, Columbia Township, Michigan. Sorry, I said that out of order. Let's move on to the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda?
Yes, I'm on here 2 times for some reason.
Okay, if there are no changes, I'd like to entertain a motion on the agenda.
Oh, I'll make a motion. We accept it as it is.
I'll support.
Okay, was that Bev?
Yes.
Thank you. It was motioned by Dave and supported by Bev to approve the agenda as presented. Is there any discussion?
Yes, actually, I am having a problem with the agenda. I can't scroll it and my screen looks strange here. I'm getting all of Christie's, I'm seeing all of her screen, all the tabs that she's got in the background. And I can't seem to minimize it to get to my email to get the agenda.
Press your escape key.
What's that?
Press your escape key.
Ah, thank you. I don't even need to know why that worked. I'll just accept it.
Okay. If we're ready for a roll call, Dave?
Yes.
Oh, I think we missed the motion. Oh, no, we got the motion. Sorry. Okay, Dave,
Yeah.
no Chris. Beverly?
Yes.
Anita?
Yes.
Leslie, yes. Motion passes. Let's move on to the minutes. Are there any changes to the March 10th, 2021 minutes?
I don't have any.
I'll entertain a motion on the previous minutes.
I'll make a motion. We accept the minutes as is.
Okay. Is there support?
I'll support.
Who was that, Bev?
Yes.
Thanks. Sorry, I have a hard time telling the two of your voices apart. Okay, it was moved by Dave, supported by Bev to approve the March 10th, 2021 minutes as presented. Is there any discussion? Okay, we'll move to a roll call. Dave,
Yes.
Beverly,
Yes.
Anita,
Yes.
Leslie, yes, motion passes. At this time, I'd like to open public comments at 7:05. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes. Are there any comments at this time?
Yes, I'd like to make a comment. This is Marcia and I'm the iPhone. I don't know how to put my name on it. Lucan, Saddle Lake Island, Columbia Township. I have 2 comments. First comment is I see that you're discussing pole barns and accessory buildings in the coming agenda. I have a quick opinion on that I feel maybe we should be allowing pole barns when they're not adjacent, only because the way the zoning seems to be, if somebody wants to put up a pole barn, they have to have a well and a septic, and it almost has to be a house. I think that's kind of overkill, though I understand why we didn't want pole barns standing in no man's land. And then my next comment is about the Planning Commission's philosophy. I thought to keep the density of the keep the density down in the country. And when you start building, and this is just around the lake, this is a personal, but when you start building like the houses around the lake and then across the road and then up on the hill and everything else, I don't know if there should be some type of a density within the so many feet of the lake. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other comments? Have there been any communications received?
I have not received any communications. This is
Okay.
Tasha.
Thank you. Okay, hearing no other comments or communications, I'd like to close the public comment at 7:07. There is no public hearing this evening, so we will move to new business. First under new business is to review the capital improvement plan. And just for my clarification, I saw under there was the CIP apps, and I wasn't sure what that is.
I
Tasha,
think within the document for people to maybe apply for something, there's an application that people fill out, and I think that's what that is. It's just part of the CIP. There's some sort of application process.
Okay,
It
so
almost,
the app and the 6-year plan are all part of the review of the capital improvement plan, correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay,
Yeah, so there's the capital improvement plan, and then there's like the forms 1 and 2. Yeah, page 1 of 1 and 2 of 2. And then a project evaluation form. I think that must just go with something in the document.
okay. I was just making sure I hadn't missed something.
Tasha, I believe those forms might have something to do with, they look to me like the kind of forms that when you get a grant, you have to fill out forms like that. So,
Yes, yep, and that the capital improvement plan is so that the township can apply for grants.
yeah, I understand that. So I think those forms are just examples of forms that come from a grantor to the grantee.
Correct. Yes, yes. I concur. And then a little bit of the CIP, for typically a township that has public water, sewer, and utilities, they have a capital improvement plan within their master plan already. The township I don't think has any public utilities anywhere, but for them to apply for grants that they want and need, they need to have this capital improvement plan added to the master plan, either to it or a supplemental document, like a master plan number 2 or something, so that the township can apply for grants. It's a very typical document that a lot of cities have as part of their master plan, this capital improvement plan.
Well, since our master plan, oh,
Bev, are you talking?
yeah, I was just going to say that since our master plan is complete and this isn't yet, would we add it as like a supplement? A supplemental document? Is that
We
what you
would,
were
yes.
saying, Tasha?
Yes, correct. So it typically goes in the master plan, but yes, since the master plan is already done, then we would just add it as a supplemental document, correct?
Would that be an appendix?
Yeah, that would be a good word to use, yes.
Personally, in its current form, I'm not comfortable sending it up as is. I don't know how much the rest of you have had a chance to look at it and look at contents.
I have been looking at it, and there are a lot of minor corrections that need to be made, and if you need someone to volunteer to do that, to get that, like, scratch off everything, if I could get this, I can get this electronically from Ken and go through it and correct all the typos, some things, the sentence structure, to give us something to go from. Would that be helpful for our next meeting?
Yeah, you should have an electronic copy in your email, don't you?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I don't know if it's workable, but
I think it should be a Word document. I don't think it's a PDF. I think it's a Word document.
okay, great, good.
I think the other forms are a PDF, but the actual document is a Word document.
And at this point, I'm more concerned with the document itself.
Well, so just for my part, I read through this and it's beyond me to criticize this or nitpick it. So I'm going to say I think we should just go ahead and accept it and kind of move on, or keep it moving on. Because this has to go to a public hearing, right?
Yes, correct.
Yeah. Yeah, because I know Ken is anxious to get this blight thing going, or, well, not this has nothing to do with the blight, but I know he wants to get this going, and I think we ought to just proceed. Should support him as much as we can.
I'm a little hesitant to just push it through. We were somewhat encouraged to push through the master plan and chose to take it piece by piece to make sure that it was accurate and we were putting our best foot forward. So I would like to see a similar move on this to make sure that it's correct before we put it out to the public.
Okay, I was assuming this is something he just copied from somewhere else. Is that correct?
I don't believe so. Given the number of errors in it, I would assume it wasn't just copied from someplace else.
Okay, well, maybe it needs closer examining.
It could use a little bit of cleaning up to be something that's going to represent the township.
So do like you, Bev and
Like we
Leslie
did with
want to
the
work on
master.
it, and then
I'm fine with
give us
that.
a revised draft next month?
Yes, I would commit to that
Okay,
and have it ready for the next meeting. I could send it out to everyone before the next meeting and get eyes on it before then.
I think that would be a great idea, and then we can have an actual discussion about the content at next meeting.
I
Make
like
sure
that plan.
Includes what we want and doesn't include something egregious.
Oh, did you spot anything really egregious in there?
I didn't look at it that thoroughly. I kind of got caught up in the details.
Okay,
So, I mean, I would assume that there's not, but I also want to be able to say with a clear conscience that we actually looked at it, we looked at it in detail, and this is what we're presenting to the public instead of, oh, I didn't realize it said that.
okay.
Right. I agree with that.
And just to be clear, I'm in full support of the township having a capital improvement plan. I think it's a great idea, looking out in the future like that. But I do agree with Leslie that we want to do it correctly and thorough. We don't have to take as long as we did with the master plan, but we do need to make sure that we have looked at it.
Yes, let's definitely not take as long as it took on the master plan.
Right, for sure. This is not that big of a project like that was, so.
Exactly. So I would anticipate that we should be able to address this all at the next meeting and I would like to shoot to have a clean copy in the commission's hands, maybe 2 weeks before the next meeting.
That would be great.
What do you think, Bev?
I'm thinking maybe, trying to pull up a calendar here. Would a week before be good enough? Like 7 days, a full week?
As soon as possible, but not, I would say as soon as possible, but no later than a week in advance. How's that?
How about that? Yeah, I'll shoot for 2 weeks for sure,
Okay,
which would be 2 weeks from now.
Right.
about. So you're looking at, around April 28th, around there.
right. And if you and I want to work together, we can divide duties or whatever.
Okay, let's say by the end of April. This
Okay.
is the 14th today, so is that fair? And then our next meeting isn't until
May
Let's see.
12th.
May
Yep.
12th, yeah. So. Does that work?
For me.
Dave, does that work for you?
Oh, yeah, that sounds fine.
Okay, so we will plan to hash that out next month and then tentatively plan on having a hearing in June. As a point of clarification, I know that there was some discussion of needing to have surveys and possibly another meeting to receive public feedback. Would that happen or would that need to happen before the hearing or after the hearing?
Another survey for this capital improvement plan?
That's what I'm hearing that we need to do.
I'm
Oh.
thinking the surveys would be for what type of projects people want. So I don't know if this plan is like targeting anything specifically at this point.
Yeah, you would do the survey and all of that before you had the public hearing. The public hearing is for the final document.
Because when I had inquired when this emerged, I had asked if the survey that we had done for the master plan would be adequate. And was told that we needed to do a new one, even if it was, I mean, obviously a smaller one, but needed to solicit more public opinion. So if that's the case, then we would need to push the hearing back further in order to be able to have surveys either posted or sent, et cetera. And I don't know if we need to have another public forum like we did for the master plan, or if that would be resolved by the hearing.
Well, you could either do a forum and not the survey. I don't know kind of what was easier. You could do like the charrette or some sort of open house instead of doing the survey. What you could do either one. You wouldn't necessarily have to do both. I don't know which one was easier. With the COVID, I guess probably a survey would be better, I guess.
Right. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
We could do that charrette again right now. Okay,
Yeah,
so we-
someone would have to, yeah, create survey and then get it out. And then there'd have to be time for people to respond, and then, yeah, you're down into July or August for the public hearing.
okay, and
Can
would
I
the rest
give-
of you like me to have a draft of a survey for next month as well? Or do you want to wait on the survey?
If you need to have a survey, I would get that going. I don't, that
Get it
wouldn't
ready
really, the text itself wouldn't have any bearing on the survey. So yeah, I think the sooner you get that going, the better.
Okay. I can have that prepared for next month as well.
Just to give
go ahead.
timeline reference, everyone, since I manage the website, I can have a survey up on the website the day after it's given to me. So I just so you guys know for planning purposes.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. Christy, since you're on the line, do you think that we would get enough feedback just posting it, or do we need to send out postcards again?
I really hesitate to weigh in on that discussion.
Yeah, I
Oh,
Okay.
you were part of the first one, so I think your input would be, I guess, a valid point, since you were part of the first
Or
survey
even
that we did.
For the rest of you, do you think
Yeah.
that, I mean, how are we going to get the word out for people to answer the survey? I think we have to send something out, or we have to put an ad in the reminder.
at the
Or
bare
somewhere.
minimum, an ad. I think we do need to get the word out somehow. We had problems getting response to the last survey, and this survey could be even more important because a capital improvement plan, although, yeah, we do need it to be able to apply for grants, but it's also something that can be used to start the funding of major projects, which could mean taxes for people. So I think it's important that people get to weigh in on, what do they want in the township? What would they think would be worth taking on as a large project? Do we want new parks? Do we want fiber, broadband internet for all the township residents, those type of things? What do people want? So it would be nice if we could get a good response.
Right. Do all of you think that putting it in the advertiser is going to be the best way to get the word out, to get a response on the survey?
Probably, it seems like most people read that particular paper. I don't know how many people actually go to the website, daily or weekly to see what's going on. So, but most people do read that paper. So I think that would be a good distribution start.
Okay.
And we do have printing and publishing budget. Would it, I'm trying to remember how expensive it was the last time to mail out.
It was
think
like
doing the mail
$3,000 or something.
Yeah.
How much was it?
Expensive.
It seemed like 3,000 was.
Yeah, that's pretty costly. That would be almost half our budget.
Mm-hmm.
If we could put it in the advertiser, and I know the clerk has a Facebook page, so we could send it out that way as well, or she could, not we could, but on our
Yeah.
behalf.
Yeah, maybe even something old school, like, we throw up a couple flyers around town in
Yeah, we
Grand
could do that.
Junction, see if that gets some people.
Okay, good ideas. Okay, I can draft something up along those lines for discussion for next month and send it out in advance for you to look at. Other thoughts or comments on this subject? Okay, so we'll postpone this with having corrections and updates made for a full discussion at the May meeting. Is there any other new business that's come before the commission?
I do not have any new business.
And let's move on to old business. The SLU provisions for adult group and child care group and SLU adult child care 58, 59. I'll go to that.
So I submitted some samples from some other townships. Kind of have some idea, and then I kind of put together some general things that are typically part of a special land use. That page that's showing, you know, you need the lot size, parking, lighting, setbacks. These are just some very general types of things. We could kind of cut and paste some of the ones from the surrounding townships, or we could come up with our own.
Tasha, are there state regulations like for lighting and setbacks and stuff?
I do have a copy of the act. I'm not exactly sure if it addresses lighting. I'm not even sure it addresses setbacks. I know that it requires a fence. But I'm not sure if the text itself has other provisions. I'd have to read through the act and see what it says.
Okay, so as long as we're not in conflict with the state.
Right.
Yeah.
But they typically don't give setback requirements as part of that's usually not part of their licensing act, is a setback.
Right.
It's usually more like the number of children, more safety things than zoning.
Well, I would be perfectly happy with you cutting and pasting whatever you thought would work the best.
Well, it just depends on how many regulations you want. As you can see, some of these only have 2, other ones have, 5 or 6. We kind of went through them and circled them and picked and choose. That might be. Does anyone have any ones that they like?
So are you looking at the addition or the clarification on 4? An adult group home, a child care group home. And
Yeah,
then
so
adult and child day programs. Is that
so there's 3 sheets of sample special land use provisions from other townships.
mhm.
Instead of creating my own, I just thought we could pick and choose from another township so you could kind of see what their requirements were.
So I had a couple of questions. There's one under adult foster care group homes, that number 4 says an illuminated sign permanently attached to the principal structure. So you're saying they have to have a sign attached to their building?
I'm not saying that. That's just
Yeah.
what that particular provision
Right.
for that township require. Yeah, they would rather have it on the building than by the road.
Okay, I just thought that was kind of odd. And then on the next page under childcare home group, I like that it states all required state and local licensing shall be maintained at all times. I like having that written in there. And then under number 3, it says a 6-foot high privacy fence. Does it have to be a privacy fence?
It wouldn't necessarily have to be a private, I know that the state requires a fence, but I don't know that it's necessarily required to be a privacy. I don't know why a chain link fence wouldn't work.
Quick enough.
It would have to be something more solid other than like a split rail fence where they could climb
Okay.
through. But I don't know that it would necessarily have to be a privacy fence.
Okay.
Right, something safe. And I saw under that, under K, daycare group homes, I like that they were talking about the areas for play would be fenced in and that they would be in the rear yard. I don't know if they have to be in the rear yard, but I'm thinking somehow to make sure that there's a safe distance from the road. Because as we know, most of our roads out here are, people go pretty fast.
Yes, and you probably don't want kids in the front yard anyway.
Yeah.
Do you think the fence should be 6 feet or would 4 feet be sufficient?
Most of them say, or I've seen say 6 feet, I think, don't they? I'm trying to find it in another spot.
Oh, some of them say 4. Fencing at least 4 feet, but no more than 6.
Oh, okay.
It kind of says both.
I don't know. 6 is probably safer, but are we the ones that are determining how they run their business?
That's correct. With these provisions, you're determining some things of them running their business, correct? Well, most of them are little kids, so, you know,
A 4-foot fence, somebody can climb or reach over and grab a little kid.
yeah, that's, yes.
Yeah, that was a concern I had.
If it were my kid or grandkid, I would like a taller fence,
Yep.
even 5 foot, but.
Yeah,
Uh,
so, yeah, several of these say 6 feet, so,
Yeah,
Do they?
that's,
Okay.
it appears to be fairly standard.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, no less than 4. Yeah, we could do 6. And then chain link or privacy, I don't think it should be like split rail or.
Right. How do you indicate that it's something secure? A secure fence. Because you could make a fence out of chicken wire too. It could still,
Right?
it'd still be 6 feet tall.
I don't know how you describe that as a closed fence that somebody couldn't climb through. Is there a good word to describe that?
So this one says appropriate fencing for the safety of the children.
Oh, there you go.
That would work.
And
That's
then
on
would you add to that sentence, no less than 6 feet in height, or no more than 6 foot in height, no less than, or just 6 foot in height?
yeah, 6 feet, yeah, correct. It's required to be at least 6 feet in height.
I wonder if on the one that's circled, the 300.1409, looks like the privacy fence is only along adjoining properties, and that's probably in case the neighbors don't want to look at all the children and the toys.
Sounds like it's the neighbor's problem to me. Isn't it? If you don't want to
Oh,
see
where
what's
is that?
going on over there, why don't you put up your own fence? Is that wrong?
Probably, it's probably the business's obligation.
Okay.
I'll just put an appropriate fencing for the safety of the children and is required to be at least 6 feet in height, something along those lines.
Yes, that sounds good to me.
So do you want me just to draft something, or do you want to kind of pick and choose some of these and should there be a lot size requirement?
You seem to have a pretty good grasp on the rules and some different ideas. I think that what you have drafted or come up with in the past is pretty quality work, and we might as well defer to you and then pick it apart later.
Okay, I could do that. I could put, what, 4 or 5 things, I guess?
As a
Lovely.
consideration, if we were thinking about lot size, I mean, there are some, thinking of properties like around the lakes that have much smaller lot sizes. Would it be acceptable to have one of these type of homes there? And do we need to put something about the fencing has to be so far from the water's edge?
I think we should probably have if not a minimum lot size, then something, some kind of a setback from the home next to it.
So one of these say, the building and the lot shall conform to the yard setbacks and height standards of the zoning district in which it's located. Which sometimes we have the smaller lots, the non-conforming platted lots
Right.
that might not actually meet the lot. I'm not too sure that I'm stuck on like a lot size requirement. Typically you already have a home that's there, so your home, you know, you already have a home and then you kind of, you know, get married, have kids, and then start a daycare. So your house and the facility is you know, the
Yeah.
structure is typically already there. So, you know, it could be prohibited if we're requiring a setback for, you know, a home that was built in the 60s that might not meet the setbacks. Or the lot size. So we would be regulating the children being outside to make sure they're within a fenced-in area, not running around the neighborhood. And I don't know that it would matter the lot size and or the setback of the home itself. We could do some sort of, I don't know, set activity for setbacks or playground equipment or something maybe.
I'm concerned that depending on where it is, that we previously said that we couldn't have businesses in residential areas unless it was in like the commercial zone. So now if you're, you know, thinking of past discussions, if somebody opens up a childcare next to you and, you know, before there was basically, you know, rarely somebody there, and now you've got cars coming and going all times of the day because kids are being dropped off and picked up, there's a lot more noise. You know, is that going to be a concern for other people who also have properties in that area?
Right, which are part of these special use regulations to try to protect the neighbors also. So these are, you're not required to allow them, the group homes, in a residential district. You are required to allow the 6 and under in the residential district, but these group ones, you don't have to allow them in a residential district. If you don't want to, if you feel it's more commercial than the township would like to see in a residential neighborhood. a more densely populated residential neighborhood. Because yeah, you would never know where someone might want a daycare.
Yeah, I was saying a group home is different than someone doing licensed childcare in their home.
So it's the number of children. So 1 to 6 is the regular, and then 6 to 12 or 7 to 12 is the group. So you have double the amount of kids. You have 12 kids instead of 6. That's the distinction of the group. The daycare center is the center as to where you can have as many as you want, and that's really more a commercial facility.
Yeah.
So yes, there would be double the cars coming in and out if you actually had 12 kids. It would be more comings and goings. "12 kids yelling outside instead of just 6.
Maybe we should disallow that in the lake areas. Maybe they wouldn't like that.
Or do we just put it in the zone that we created? Going down Phoenix.
In the commercial zone, yeah.
The overlay, whatever.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, at least for the larger ones. 6 doesn't seem too bad, but you got more than that, it seems, on those little bitty lake lots.
Or you could have a size limit, you're required to have, 1+ acres. It is your ordinance and they are your provisions, so someone who had a lake lot wouldn't be able to have one. Whereas the people in the ag district who have larger lots, they would be able to accommodate it better.
Right. And if they did have a smaller lot, could they apply for a special use permit? Or a variance or something?
I think your ordinance does not prohibit applying for a variance from standards. So yes, if they met all the standards, but the lot size, they could apply for a variance from that provision, yes.
Right, so they'd still have an out if they had a half an acre lot on 388. They could still do something with that.
So it sounds like you'd be better off placing it by zone or something, or?
Maybe the agricultural district? Or
Maybe
residential?
commercial. Did you say, Tasha, over 6, it's considered 6 to 12, it's considered more commercial?
No, I said the daycare center is more commercial. The daycare center is more like the preschool and the centers where you have 20 or 30 kids in an actual center and not typically in a home.
Mm-hmm.
So the ones we're talking about today are in your home. You have your own home daycare with up to 6 kids, or 12, I mean.
Probably the ag district is probably more suited. But then I don't know, it's so individual. You could be in the lake area and you could have 30 acres. I don't know. What do you
Yes,
typically see out there, Tasha?
Well, I typically see the stuff that I present. I haven't actually really approved any daycare centers. I know that the state of Michigan requires the township to sign something if you apply, but I know that they're out there and I haven't approved any. I had one application in one township. But other than that, I haven't really seen anything or approved any group daycare. But I thought the state had a form that the township was supposed to sign, and I'm sure there's daycares out there. There's gotta be, I'm sure.
They
But
just
I
may
haven't
not
had
be
any
licensed.
issues, right? Or they're just, yeah, doing it on the fly. Yeah, I haven't had any issues with it. I know there's a group daycare on my way back and forth to work that doesn't have a fence, and it bothers me every time I drive by it.
I'm surprised that the state has, I bet they're not licensed.
Yeah, unless they were, they've had it for a long time before the fence requirement went in.
Yeah, but I don't think licensing is like an ordinance. But I'm
That
glad
could
we
be.
don't have that problem. That would drive me nuts too. Well, childcare is a valid need. I don't want to be overly restrictive, but I don't want to encourage unfit or unsafe practices when it comes to the childcare industry business.
Well,
Right,
these
and then
have to go through the application and go through before the board for a special land use, correct?
yes, correct. That's what you wanted or proposing to have a special land use. So there would be a public hearing. And then we have these provisions. And then there's also the general provisions of, like you said, the noise, the lighting, the neighborhood compatibility. There's those subjective things also that go with the special land use. So, I guess if someone did complain, there's always those other health, safety, and welfare of the township things to use too. I think it's an essential thing that we need because especially with the COVID, people are staying home.
Yeah.
And then, so I'd hate to not allow it in
Could we-
regular single family homes.
Do you want to consider maybe just having the smaller homes? So did you say 7 was the break off between a child care home and a group home?
Yes, 1 to 6 is the regular that we are required to allow. And then the 7 to the 12 is the group home, and you are able to regulate those, correct? So if you
Okay,
did not want to allow them, you do not have to.
But if you had 1 to 6, you don't even need to have a special land use for that?
Correct, you have to allow it by right.
Okay. And it looks like the 2 adult programs are limited to 7. Is that?
Yes, so those also, so the adult 1 to 7, you have to allow by right. The foster care, also, so the group homes, or the large homes, you can then regulate.
Well, maybe we should put the larger ones just in the commercial strip along 388.
I mean, if that's basically what we're talking about, because the others are allowed by right,
Mhm.
and the larger ones are the ones that are going to create more noise, more light, etc., then it seems reasonable to say that they have to be in that commercial overlay.
Yeah, I agree.
What about the commercial district in general also in, or just the county road 388?
I would say that whole line that goes over through Belmont. No, is that not Belmont?
Gotcha, okay. So what about some of the commercial districts that we have already, or would it just be in that overlay?
Oh, you mean because it kind of skips over what was already commercial?
Yeah, well, there's several other commercial districts in the township. There's the overlay already in Grand Junction. The Grand Junction commercial overlay.
Mhm.
Would you want it in there also? I don't know
I don't
what we're
see
gonna
that.
call.
I would think you could put it in any of the commercial areas. What do you guys think?
Okay,
Yeah, I would say any commercial.
okay. And then still as a special land use?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, well, I'll put something together, I don't know, 3, 4 or 5 things. How do you feel about several of them have, cannot have facilities within 1,500 feet of each other? I think that's the goofiest provision, but that doesn't mean you guys don't feel the same way. And that's in several of them. Facility should not be located within 1,500 feet of another licensed facility. I don't know why that's a thing.
Is
I
that
guess it-
because, Tasha, is that because, I'm thinking of 2 reasons, because some of the licensed facilities can be, a halfway house, different things like that. And then, of course, you never know, somebody might want to create a block of group homes. I don't know. But that might be in there because of the different nature of the adult. One of the definitions I was reading in here.
Well, the halfway house is mentioned.
Yeah, I saw that in there somewhere. I'm
Mhm.
trying to find it again.
Under child care home group, number 4D.
You're so good, Anita. Thank you.
Well, it's in more than just that one too, that talks about this 1,500 feet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was in that one with the,
It's in
The
like several
300.
of them.
I'm wondering if it's because of, I mean, I don't know why it would have to be 1,500 feet from another child care home, but for the other ones being around adults, I would assume
Yeah,
it's,
I mean,
That makes sense.
that totally, yeah, that makes sense. To be 1,500 feet away from a substance abuse,
Right.
rehabilitation,
That makes sense.
the halfway house, yeah, that makes perfect sense for that, but not another daycare, that's goofy.
Right.
I don't know that, I mean, we don't have to necessarily have that part in there, do we? About the being away from another child care home?
No, I just noticed that it was in several of them, and I just wasn't sure how you kind of felt about that particular, that seems to
Since
be
they-
in all of them.
Since several of them mention it, do you think it comes from someplace else? That requirement comes from someplace else?
Well, it might, definitely, I totally get the substance abuse and the halfway house, that makes perfect sense, because children, yes,
Right.
being, but from another licensed group home makes no sense.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying, is that restriction coming from another law or,
That, yeah, maybe it's in the act itself, the daycare, that could be.
which it still doesn't make any sense, but it's not like these other townships just made it up. Because
Right.
it's mentioned in all of them.
Yes.
Well, and I would think you would still want even the distance even from the adult group homes.
Yeah.
So the only one I'm really questioning is why the distance from other childcare homes.
Why other of the same kind?
Right.
Maybe one township made it up and all the rest copied.
Yes, I believe that totally. If you read all my ordinances, you'll notice that they look very similar to each other. Okay, well, I'll work on that for next month, and we'll propose it in the commercial overlay in the commercial districts, and then I'll put some, 3 or 4 of them together so we can kind of keep moving on from this one.
Okay. Okay, then let's move on to the accessory building.
Okay, so this one was a lot. So I kind of updated our list or my list of the need to fix the ordinance, and this took up five of the things on the list with just the accessory buildings. I guess we could just start with, so each zoning district has the chart for the size and the height based on the property size. Currently it caps at 3,500 square feet. So if you have, it kind of goes to the 5 acres and then it caps it at the 3,500 square feet. Wondering if you'd be interested in, you know, uncapping it, maybe 3,500 for, you know, every 5 acres or something, instead of, I think we've had 2 special uses for people that have, you know, 40 or 50 acres who wanted to exceed this 3,500, because there is a special use provision, which that's a whole nother thing, but was just wondering how you guys felt about maybe 3,500 square feet for every 5 acres or 10 acres or something.
So the special uses that you got, Tasha, what was the purpose of the buildings? Because we're not regulating farm buildings or anything. These are generally for residences, correct?
Correct. Yeah, they were storage buildings, regular residential storage buildings. They were not, yeah, the farm buildings are exempt from the size, correct. So they were
So-
regular storage buildings.
So like a 50 by 100 foot pole barn would be 5,000 square feet.
Correct, which would exceed the 3,500.
I
But
was
they,
just trying to picture 3,500 square foot, what it size wise. What is our current height? You said there's a height restriction?
the height restriction is 25 feet. I'm not necessarily suggesting we change that. That's just what the chart has in it. It has the acre and then the square footage and then the height. I'm not proposing that we change the height. The 25 feet kind of helps with, you know, having second stories and, you know, possible living space. But people do have campers, so sometimes you do need a, you know, a higher pole barn.
Yeah. And larger too. It's probably cheaper to build one big one than it is a bunch of small ones.
Yes, correct.
It'd be about a 50 by 70, Bev.
50 by 70
Yeah.
is what the 30, oh yeah, duh. Thanks for the math, Leslie, appreciate it.
Which 40 by 40 is pretty popular right now. I've issued a lot of pole barns, you know, 40 by 40. 30 by 40 is only 1,200 square feet. That's a pretty popular size also. But I kind of feel like when you have more property, you're being, you know, kind of penalized. You know, you have more property and you might have more stuff. So
Yeah,
I'm kind of in favor of the size restriction because it really does help with the smaller lots. But kind of once we get up to the larger ones, you know, it was just kind of a thought.
Well, and adding more space might help with that blight.
Yes, for sure.
I like the idea of adding more space. I don't know about an additional 3,500 per 5 acres. What would that? Okay, back to math. I'll do this on my own.
Well, it'd be like, so if you had 10 acres, then you could have 7,000 square feet. Or it could be what, you know, or it could go up to 10 acres. you know, you could then jump up to 10 acres or something, or 20 acre, I'm not really sure. I was just trying to kind of go with the flow of the chart, but or it looks like it progressively goes up about 500 square feet every acre or so.
Mm,
I just feel like it shouldn't be capped. Like it should kind of keep going. If you have more property, you shouldn't necessarily need a special land use. I mean, you could always cap it still at something, you know, you're still, you know, you could cap it at something. I'm not sure what that is off the top of my head right now, but, you know.
I would think part of the concern is you don't want some, you don't want somebody having basically a hanger in their sitting out
Right.
there.
Right, because you have to think, what are they doing with that big, huge building? It's gonna be a commercial enterprise.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, 3,500, that's a big building.
unless they do own an airplane. But I would hate to, be the neighbor that's next door and they put it on the edge of the property. Maybe that would be a consideration, something like that.
They can always ask for a special use permit, right? Because we granted one to somebody not long ago that was putting up a great big pole building for his car collection.
Right, and that, yeah, the special use provisions need to be fixed also, but yes, the ordinance does allow for extra with a special land use.
Well,
So
what if
basically
we, I'm
go-
sorry.
Go ahead.
But I just feel if we went up one more, we probably wouldn't have, either variances or special uses.
Right. Yeah,
Maybe.
I wouldn't think going more than, say, 7,000 square feet. Because 7,000 would be 35 wide by 200 feet long, right? Is that
Or
correct?
70 by 100.
Yeah, 70 by 100, yeah.
So maybe do 10 acres and then cap it at,
Cap it at 7,000.
yeah, so 30, yeah, so, or 5,000 maybe
Or 5,000, yeah.
10 acre, if you're gonna allow 3,500 for 5 acres, I think you should be able to do it one more time for 10 acres. I think that would help.
I
Right.
agree with that. That's not that. I mean, that's a big building, but it's not as big as like what I think Dave is thinking. Because I agree with, I know where Dave's coming from and I kind of agree with that too.
Yeah, so if we added just it one more time, so 10 acre, so it basically would be capped at 7,000 for 10 acres. How's that sound?
For 10 acres or more.
10 acres and
10 acres.
above.
Correct, yes. And then we still have the special use provision if for some reason, somebody needed something larger than that. You could still keep the special use provision just in case. But again, it does not include the actual agriculturally exempt buildings, which some of those get pretty large also for your farm
Yeah.
equipment. And that does not count towards this. And it
Right.
specifically says that in there, so. Okay, well, let's move on to the next one. So most zoning ordinances have accessory use in the general provisions. How would you feel about moving the permitted accessory uses to the general provisions and move all other accessory uses to the general provisions also? So typically an ordinance would say principal permitted uses, it would say an accessory building as an example, or accessory building and structures, and then you then go to your general provisions, or whatever you call yours. Yeah, the general provisions, and then you then have a paragraph of your requirements for accessory buildings. Instead of having the chart in the district, it would go to one spot, and then you wouldn't have this chart in every single district.
That sounds logical.
You would then move it, and then it would all, you know, you could even just keep the chart if that's easier. Some of them still have charts.
So basically,
And then-
all of those charts or some compilation thereof would move to Article 1, general provisions.
Yeah, and then it keeps going with the home occupation, a shed, signs. You know, those typically would go in the general provisions and not in permitted accessory uses. Because a general provision is something allowed in the districts.
I think that makes
Just a
sense.
thought.
Yeah, that sounds fine to me.
So the, Tasha, the accessory use is not, it's not different in each zoning district. It's not different in each district.
They're all relatively the same. If you kind of read through the R1, it's probably different in the commercial. Let's see. The RO is a little bit different, but it still has the chart. But for the most part, yes, they're the same. The storage shed, the ag is a little bit different, but it still has, you know, they're relatively all the same. So you would just go to the general provision. You would have the, you know, the home occupation in the general provisions, signs in the general provisions, or if we decide to have a sign ordinance, it would be in that.
So then it would be, if you were trying to explain to someone where to look in our ordinances for something, then you would tell them if it's not listed specifically in the like residential section, then go look in, then to look in general provisions.
Correct, yes. Like you would still, so in the principal permitted uses, you would put them in there. So it would say home occupation. And then in your general provisions, you actually then have your home occupation rules listed. So kind of, you know, it will then tell you what a home occupation is and what's allowed. As an example. Or if it's too much, we could just leave it as it is. I don't even know if you have home occupation. I think you just have a definition currently of a home occupation, but. We can explore that a little bit more. It was just an idea.
Well, I don't have any preference. I just want it to be easy for people that don't, when you don't know what to look for, to find what you're looking for.
I think moving that little chart makes a lot of sense, because when I first started this, I started reading through the zoning ordinance section book, and I didn't understand why that chart kept reappearing. It really didn't, the whole thing didn't flow when I was just sitting and reading it front to back. It might make more sense if you're looking for something specifically, which I wasn't. I was just trying to learn things and understand them. So I think it does make sense to move it, like you said, like you suggested.
Okay. We're ready to move on to the next one?
Or,
Yep.
So the special use for the additional accessory buildings. So the districts allow in the special use additional accessory buildings. And then you go to the special use provisions. So for one, the ordinance doesn't list the number of buildings. It says the square footage. So when you read the special use, it's kind of a little, you're not allowed additional accessory buildings. You would be allowed additional square footage, not necessarily buildings. So that was one thing that was a little misleading. And then in the
Buildings.
actual, what was that?
So are you saying, Tasha, that the way it's reading now, that like if you've got a barn and you need more space, instead of building another barn, it's saying that you have to add on?
So the chart for this, so the accessory building chart refers to a total square footage. Total, it doesn't say you can only have one, and one has to be, 1,200 square feet.
Okay,
It just says that's how many square feet you can have. So you could have 3 buildings as long as you don't exceed 3,500 square feet, as an example. But the special use provision says additional accessory building. But the ordinance doesn't limit the number of buildings. It limits the square footage of the total buildings. So just the wording needs to be additional square footage for accessory buildings, maybe, instead of additional accessory buildings.
That seems to make sense.
And then when you go to 413S, since it's a special use, it then has, and this chart makes no sense. So it says, except for buildings related to farming, additional accessory buildings shall be set back from any, so the special use provisions has setbacks, which it just randomly has setbacks in the special use that, and then what does the prohibited mean? It's prohibited to have it. The 3,500 at the bottom in the chart where it says prohibited. So additional accessory buildings shall be set back. And then it says it's prohibited, and then you keep reading, and then for 10 acres or more, you can have an additional 3,500 square feet. And that's really the only provision or relief that it's giving.
oh, you're looking at the charts that are there, because I'm in the ordinances.
I'm in the special land use provisions, 413S as in Sam.
Yes, and are you looking at the charts?
There's 2 charts in the special provisions.
Yeah, the accessory
There is
building
a-
size and the lot size chart?
Right.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I'm looking at what you're referring to.
So when you want to exceed the 3,500 square feet and you have 7 acres as an example, then you would apply for a special use to have the additional square footage. And then these are the provisions that you use to grant the special land use. But it just doesn't make any sense. There's an additional setback for this additional provision, and then over 3,500, it's prohibited. but you can have 3,500 because you're applying for more than 3,500. And then the last one, over 10 acres, up to 3,500 for all accessory buildings, each of 10 for the 10 acres. So that's basically the only provision, is that if you have over 10 acres, then you can have 3,500 for each 10 acres. So we have all of this provision that makes no sense.
Which that completely conflicts what we just talked about previously, doesn't it?
Yes. So I would like to reorganize it or redo it. Do you feel you should be able to, so now that we upped to the 7,000, should we still allow for the special use? Or could it be something we would just remove because we're already allowing the possibility of 7,000 on 10 acres? 10 plus acres.
I don't know what you guys are thinking, but in my mind, it's like, it's so conflicting that it might be better to remove it. It's like total opposite of what we just did.
Correct, and that's kind of why I brought, so by upping it regularly, we may not have a need for this special use anymore. Whereas before, there was kind of a need for it, even though the provisions aren't very user-friendly. We might not need it now that we're allowing the 7,000 square feet for 10 plus acres. I don't know, what if you have 50 acres? I don't know. I don't mind keeping it. It just needs to be fixed, so it makes more sense.
Yeah, I think you should fix it so it makes more sense, but I think people should still have the option of applying for a special use. I keep thinking of that one guy that put up a great big huge barn for his car collection.
Yeah, his was like 4,500 square feet.
Oh, was
So
it?
it wasn't 4,800, maybe it was 4,800. And then he had already had maybe another building already. So yeah, and he had like 40 acres, so he fit into this perfectly with the 3,500 for each 10 acres. So
Yeah,
his particular.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess it could go either way. Maybe we should just say, 7,000's plenty.
Well, then I'm thinking of like if someone, say they've got 50 acres or whatever, and they are in the right spot and they own an airplane or a helicopter or something, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't mind keeping it in there. It just needs to, it just needs to be fixed a little bit. Do you feel there should be an extra setback? That's kind of what I didn't understand, was this extra setback for this building. I feel the person is probably going to have, you have your house and then you have your little, 30 by 40 pole barn next to your house, and then you're then going to build this, larger structure. Do you think if you are applying for a special use, that should have a bigger setback? Like 150 feet for 2,000 square feet seems, I guess if you have 50 acres, that wouldn't be too bad, but it just seems excessive, I guess.
Maybe maybe when it was written, it was intended for smaller lots or situations where it's going to be to prevent it from being placed right on top of a neighbor. I don't know.
Yeah, so that's basically kind of what this means, is that there's an extra setback for this additional building. Whereas if you were just building a regular one, you wouldn't have this, extra setback. But it would kind of make sense if you had a larger building, maybe not to be 150 feet, but, maybe 50 feet. So, I mean, the idea kind of makes sense that, yeah, if you have a larger building, being farther away from the property line would make sense. Just a thought.
And the one that's 10 foot is that, I'm surprised that a minimum setback is 10 foot on anything.
Yeah, so that's what in the ordinance, that's what the side setback is currently, is 10 feet. So a new house, a pole barn, a garage is 10 feet. And the lake lots, it's only 3 feet. So I'm not opposed to, if you are applying for a special use and your building is, 2,000 square feet or more, that you would have an additional setback of 50 or 75 feet. I think 150 is a bit much, but just a thought.
A 3-foot setback, well,
Yeah, in the RO district, I believe the side setback is like 3 feet. But you wouldn't have a large building in the RO district because they're too small, so.
yeah.
So, yeah, so I can work on fixing that, so it kind of makes, so it actually shows when you apply for the special land use, what you're actually, what the actual provision is that you're allowing. So if you want to have more, then there should be a more setback, which that makes sense. And then the chart at the bottom, we'll have to make something up, so I can fix that, so it makes more sense. Anyone have any other questions on that one? We're ready to move on?
Yeah, move on.
Okay, so now we are to pole barns on vacant land. A fun discussion that everyone has been wanting to have. So currently the ordinance does not allow, or no, I take that back. So there's a special land use that can be obtained to have an accessory building on a vacant lot, which is a 413F, which those provisions are horrible. Again, that they don't make any sense. So if you're on the lake and you have, if you're a lake lotter, there's the street and then you have a back lot, with the special land use, you could build a pole barn on that, provided that you meet these particular provisions. So it was kind of been brought up that the township would like to allow accessory buildings on vacant lots, I think, in any district, not necessarily. So there's two things. So allowing an accessory building on a vacant lot for someone who owns a home in the township. So you own your house and then you have a parcel either next to it or across the street, or we'll say within 200 feet as an example. So you still have a home in the township, but you can have a pole barn on the vacant lot without the dwelling, but you still own a home. So we could go at it possibly that way, or you could have a residential storage building on a lot and not have a home at all in the township. That would be I guess, two ways of regulating this as an example.
So, I've heard from someone on the lakes, and there was someone who wanted a pole barn, and they ended up turning it, had to build a residence because they weren't allowed to have a pole barn. So I think when someone's lot is nearby like that, that it should be allowed. That would, especially in areas like that that are already kind of crowded up, it's one less well and septic, and one less draw on the resources there. And when I believe what they wanted was just a pole barn, but they had the money to go ahead and build whatever they wanted. So to comply with our
Well-
ordinances, they went ahead and built a resident that they didn't need. So then that's going to be probably an Airbnb or something.
Well, that's because they probably wanted to be larger than the ordinance allowed. So they could have applied for a special land use, but it limits the size to, so maybe that particular person wanted it to be larger. So they decided to not go this route. And the ordinance allows for seasonal dwellings, which basically means it's a dwelling without heat. So you have a kitchen, a bathroom, a bedroom. But a seasonal dwelling, which is allowed in your ordinance, which is what they had constructed, just doesn't have heat. So they got to have the pole barn, and then also the dwelling part, a seasonal dwelling, because they wanted it to be larger than this 1,280 square feet.
And those seasonal dwellings, is that lake lot specific? Or is that the entire township?
To read through all the districts. It might just be the RO district.
Okay. Which makes sense there to a point. Well, I'm thinking if someone owns, they've got a home and they own the lot next to them or the lot across the road, like you were saying, and their lot doesn't have enough room to put up a pole barn. Is there no, can they get a special use permit right now to be able to put a pole barn
Yes.
on the property?
Yes, then the regulations are within 200 feet. No, it doesn't say that. It says, so garages intended for automobiles or boats when located on a lot not occupied by a single family dwelling. It's got a setback of 5 feet. And then it's got a size restriction. And then it says you're required to sign a document that you're not going to sell the parcels separate. So yes, if you were, had a lot and you were on the lake and there was the street and you own the lot across the street, the back lot, with the special use, yes, you could build a 1,280 square feet pole barn.
So what we're looking for is that without this.
What was that?
So we're looking for basically that provision, but you don't have to have a special use permit. Because right now you have to apply for special use permit.
Well, yes, kind of from what I have heard, that people want to be a building intended for automobile, boats or personal belongings when located within 200 feet of another lot in common ownership occupied by a dwelling. So even if you're not across the street, you still get like 200 feet, so you still own a dwelling, and then I'm within 200 feet, I have my lot. I could build a pole barn. I didn't put, what size it would be required to be. That's something we could work out. Recorded restrictions stating that the lots cannot be sold separate. Such garages shall not be used for dwelling, no bathroom, kitchen, or sleeping or commercial purposes. Was kind of my thought. But if you want to allow the pole barn, then we could record the restriction that they're not sold separate. And then if you're gonna basically allow a pole barn without a dwelling, then we could kind of remove.
Yeah, I
You
don't think
cannot
I
sell
because then they'll just be a dwelling.
Dave, could you repeat that? It was all garbled.
So, I don't think I like the idea of pole barns without a dwelling, because then they will just turn into kind of a hillbilly dwelling. So,
Yes, so you would prefer if you had a dwelling and you're within 200 feet, that you could then have the pole barn on the vacant lot.
right. Yep.
Would it being contiguous cover that distance?
It just says when located within 200 feet, which, we could make it 500 or it could even say that you own a dwelling in Columbia Township. So let's say you are on the lake and you have property, 3 miles away. Obviously then you couldn't restrict them from selling them separate, but just a thought, I don't know.
Oh,
I kind of feel from what I'm hearing is that you would prefer that the dwelling be close to this vacant lot, which really gears more towards the lake people and not necessarily any other, but if you were in the ag district and, it would still apply to you if you were in the ag district. But it's really geared more towards the lake lots.
right.
Kind of thinking if we put whatever the distance, but if they were connected properties and that you can't sell the properties separate so that you don't have somebody who buys a bunch of, random properties and starts putting up small pole barns and rents them out as houses.
Yeah, that's kind of the idea of this is that, you can have the pole barn without the dwelling on the specific property. And then, yes, there should be something recorded that, they're required to, when they're sold, that they are sold together.
I like that provision there. Because it'll prevent more of what's already happening from growing. And at the same time, it will allow people to have a storage building somewhere that don't necessarily have the room on their current lot.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I think 200 feet is plenty. I don't think I'd want to go any more than that.
I don't know. What if it's like 200 feet to me seems a little small. Now I'm trying to picture 200 feet.
I'm thinking more of the lake lots. Those lake lots are only, those lake
Yeah,
lots,
50, maybe 100 feet. So
so that's
some of
200.
them are pretty small.
Yeah.
So they may have something down the road. It might be the only place they could find a lot is down the road, but does the distance matter as long as we have the provision that they can't sell it off separately, even if it is like a half a mile away?
Yeah, well, it wouldn't really work it wouldn't,
Or is that
it would
illegal?
make more sense if it's closer to not sell them separate. It'd be a enforcing nightmare to say if they're a half a mile away, then you can't sell them separate. That's,
Yeah, I guess you're right.
and then what about the size? I didn't really fill that in. Such building shall not exceed, should there be a percentage of the lot or stick with, currently it's 1,280 square feet, which the ordinance allows 1,280 square feet up to 2 acres. And most of those lake lots aren't but 50 by 100.
Well, how big is a 2-car garage? Is it about 500?
Both of them. No, you get the, yeah, two stall garages. Yeah, 24 by 24.
Okay. So that's a 5-car garage, 1,280.
Yeah, so 1,280 square feet is a 32 by 40, I think.
But I'm thinking boats, golf carts, things like that, so they might need more than like a 2-car garage size. If you've got a boat and a couple of golf carts
So 1,280 would be a,
or ATVs or,
so is that correct? A 1,280 would be like a 6-car garage?
Maybe, yeah, it's a 32 by 40. So a stall of a garage is typically 12 feet.
Mhm.
A 20 by 20 is about a 1-stall garage.
it'd be like a small pole barn, a small pole barn.
Yeah, so like a 30 by 40 is a very standard size of a pole barn.
Yeah,
That seems big enough if we're
yeah.
specifically thinking about people around the lake.
Wish you could have a different provision because this is a special provision, whereas the ordinance says less than 2 acres, you get 1,280. But since this is a special thing, you could do, if you wanted to do 1,200, the 30 by 40. Only 80 square feet less, I guess. Yeah, so the ordinance currently would allow for 1,280 square feet on 2 acres or less.
That sure seems like enough.
And that's currently what it says right now. Anyway,
Yeah, it does seem like a nice size. Definitely bigger than just a garage.
yes, it's definitely bigger than just a garage, correct? Yeah, so in 2012, it was added to the ordinance for 1,280 square feet. So if we just keep the size the same, take it out of the special land use, put it in the general provisions.
Sounds good.
Yeah, since you would have to follow all of those rules anyway, I'm not really sure, just one extra thing that people would have to do to get a special land use. When the provisions can all just be administratively approved,
Right.
my thought.
Yeah,
2 hairs of less regulation, I guess.
yeah. It's something, it's in a good direction.
And then, did you like the no bathroom, no kitchen or sleeping? As part of the provision?
It seems like a good idea.
Yeah,
A bathroom would be nice because if it's, well, no, because the house
Yeah, they own a house nearby.
right there, so never mind. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, then that is good to have that in there.
Once it's got a bathroom, then it turns into an Airbnb or something,
Yeah,
or a rental unit.
right. Yep.
Okay, well, I think we made it all the way through. Okay, so the intent is to not really allow a pole barn on vacant property without a dwelling, correct?
Yes.
So you would prefer to have a dwelling within 200 feet and then you can have the pole barn on the vacant lot. Okay. Okay, yeah, I think we made it through all of them. All of the accessory building
Okay.
stuff.
Is there any other old business?
I do not have any other old business.
Let's move on to reports. Zoning administrator report. Roll call. Are there any questions for Tasha about her report? Or Tasha, anything to add?
I don't have anything else to add. Wasn't a very busy month.
I have
Well,
a,
I did notice a number of marijuana inquiries.
Yeah, so, which is kind of odd, that, I think there's one license left. And, yeah, it would seem like I had several phone calls about it. I think it's still available.
Did I hear somebody else speak up?
oh, I had a question. So on the invoice, two different people called with the same questions on the same property? Is that,
Yeah, it's for sale. So usually
What
when that's on my report, the property is usually for sale.
okay.
Yeah, so when they're listed, I seem to get several calls about the same property. You know,
Okay.
when they're for sale. It's for sale.
What are they generally asking, Tasha?
A lot of the times, the minimum dwelling size, the setbacks. And a lot of people want pole barns. If I build a house, how big of a pole barn can I have? Basic building questions is quite popular. A lot of the time the property is vacant, so they would be building a home and or a pole barn, so it's just general building questions usually.
Oh.
Very rarely do I get weird things like, weird commercial uses for the property. Most of the time it's just a regular single family home and a pole barn.
Okay, and when it's an incomplete application, that means they started a building permit and didn't finish it?
That means they didn't give me all the information that I need to approve the application.
Oh, okay.
Like it's missing the driveway permit or the site plan or the construction plans or the septic and well permits. Or yeah, sometimes the application isn't complete. Like they didn't fill out all of the sections of the application.
Okay.
Most of the time is they didn't submit all of the things I need to approve it, like the septic and well or soil erosion or driveway.
Uh-huh, okay.
Or no construction plans. I get that often.
Good.
Is there a ZBA rep report?
Oh, that's me. No, there's no report. Right? That's me?
That is.
That's you, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, Township Board Member report?
The only thing I have to report is our last ordinance that got sent up to the board. The posting deadline wasn't met, so it'll be posted again before we can finalize that.
Okay, do we need to do anything with that?
No, I don't believe we do, no.
Okay. Okay, any questions for Bev? No? Okay, then at this time, I would like to open public comments at 8:45. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes. Are there any comments at this time?
All right, I have one. This is Christy. And this is kind of more of a note. And I'm thinking, trying to figure out what's the best way to do this. But maybe Bev, before you guys have planning commission meetings in the future, you can find some time to come in and talk to Ruth about what types of phone calls we've been getting. Because I know we have received many phone calls in the last several months regarding issues related to topics you guys talked about tonight. And the citizens that are calling would like to see something very different from what you guys talked about tonight.
Should those comments be submitted as a correspondence when they leave a message like that, or?
But they're not leaving messages regarding the meeting. They're calling with questions about things like an accessory building and what they're allowed to do. And what they would like to see happen in the future. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be on your agenda. So I'm just talking about general citizens calling with whatever they might be calling about. So it might just be helpful to know what is driving calls at any given time.
Is she answering those or is she passing them to me?
She's not answering specifically if they can or cannot. Sometimes they get passed to you. Sometimes
Okay.
they're passed to somebody else here. It just kind of depends. But I do know that people really want to have accessory buildings on properties that don't have homes or are not adjacent to homes.
Okay, are there any other public comments?
Actually, I have another one for Christy. Is that last marijuana license still available?
So update on marijuana licenses. We have we have 2 completely finished medical, fully licensed facilities. We have 1 pending. We had 2 pending, but 1 withdrew. So we actually have 2 medical available.
Oh, okay.
And then we have 2 pending, as far as I'm aware, adult use, and 3 open.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing no other comments, I would like to close public comment at 8:49. And at this point, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Is that Bev?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, a motion by Bev to adjourn at 8:49. Is there support?
Oh, I'll support that.
Okay. Supported by Dave. Do a roll call. Dave,
Yes.
Beverly,
Yes.
Anita,
Yes.
Leslie? Yes. Motion passes. Thank you all. Have a good night, and we'll see you in May.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
We're gonna continue to meet virtually, correct? Till what?